Welcome back to my channel, everyone. Today I'm going to start building the first of 4 buildings in the Aedes Ars Rural Village. I'm going to start with the church. This is also available separately as kit number 1107. It's modeled after the real-world church, Iglesias de Santa Cecilia in Palencia, Spain. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. I don't really know Spanish. Aedes Ars lists the scale as 1 to 150, and if you know model trains, that's only a tiny bit bigger than N scale, which is 1/160. If you can use that as a reference, it'll give you an idea of the size. And they list it as having approximately 1,350 pieces. So today's video is going to cover steps 1 and 2, and that's going to set up the cardboard backing for the walls of the church and set it on the first of 3 base plates. This church is set on a small rise above a hill with a creek running alongside of it, and there's going to be a total of 3 base plates. The entire church gets built on the first base plate, and then it gets stood on the second base plate, which adds the retaining wall and the steps, and then that gets built on the third base plate, which puts the ground and the creek. So when you're going to work on any complicated kit in any genre of modeling, it's best to just take out the parts and tools that you need for the specific steps that you're working on. So all I really need today to get started on this, I need the instruction sheet, a cutting mat, the white glue, the cardboard cutouts that are going to back this particular portion of the model, a pair of scissors, and an X-Acto blade. I believe that's all I need, but if I discover more as I go along, I'll let you know. So this particular kit has 5 cardboard sheets to start with. The first is for the bell tower and some roof pieces, and we're not going to get as far as the roof today. The roof will go on after the ceramic bricks for the walls are put on. This will be one of the main sheets that I'll be working with, as this forms the main walls of the church, but it also has some roof pieces that'll be set aside. This sheet has the remainder of the walls, and most importantly, this one has the footprint that we're going to mount the pieces on. You can see the outline of the church there. This will be the top base plate. It'll be the smallest of the 3. You can see that'll be perforated and cut out there. And then these other 2 base plates are going to be put aside until later. This is the middle tier where you have your retaining wall and you have your steps. And then this is the bottom base plate where you're going to have your ground leading up to the church. The other base plates will go in this corner, and you'll have your creek down here. And you can see where it points to 2 of the other kits in the set, so you know how to align all 4 base plates when it's done. And how I'm going to build these, I'm going to build each one individually, and then I'll do the scenery for all 4 together. Okay, so let's get started separating out the pieces. One thing I want to do before I separate this base plate is, I don't know if you can see this, there's a piece of tape, a glossy piece of tape in the upper corner that was used to hold this bundle of sheets together. I'm going to remove that because I don't know when the scenery goes on there if that's going to be something that the scenery glue will pull off of and leave a bare spot. So I'm going to just pull that off as a precaution. Okay, so I edited out the actual work. That took a little more effort than I thought. It did mar the surface of the cardboard a little bit, but I was more concerned about having a good surface for the scenery to adhere to later than I was this looking perfect, because this will be covered. So anyway, and I also started perforating it before I realized the camera wasn't running again. So this actually really, I believe you can get all of these separated by hand. If you simply bend them and then tug at these little tiny points of adhesion, this comes off pretty neatly. Okay, and something else I want to point out, even though I've now gotten all of the pieces out of this cardboard, I'm not going to throw it out. I'm actually going to need this scrap to use in future steps, and I'll explain that when I get to it. And with pieces like this that have some of the roof that I don't need until later, I'm just going to set this aside too. I'm not going to break these pieces out yet. Okay, so you can see these parts all broke out pretty cleanly. There was a couple places where I had to get out the X-Acto blade to trim out the cardboard where the die hadn't cut neatly through. But overall it was a pretty easy process. And all of these pieces have numbers, which correspond, like this number here, when this is folded will go here on the base plate. You can see this arrow. That arrow will align with that arrow on the base plate. And in case there's any doubt for what goes where, they have all of the numbers on the instructions. So you have a very good instruction sheet that gives you the visual reference for where everything goes. But then you also have the markers here, like this arrow would go here, this arrow would go here, this one here, and then the others will fill in. One thing I'm going to have to decide before I start folding these cardboard pieces is what to do with the windows. You can see anywhere there's a doorway or a window, they have it marked with this diamond 6. And all of these diamonds correspond to steps on the other instruction sheet. There's a general sheet that pertains to every Aedes Ars model. And so when you see that, you have to refer to the detail and information for that step. And what the 6 diamond refers to is they recommend cutting out the windows. And I have to think about this because there's not going to be an interior to this model. You're going to be able to look in and see right through. So I have to decide if I'm okay with that. I mean, that'll give a more realistic look, you know, in terms of the depth with the ceramic bricks in the opening. But it'll also show into an empty space. Conversely, what I could do is just take a black Sharpie and color those windows in. You lose a little bit of realism there. But some of these, like this outer archway that's going to go at the face of this vestibule, which then exposes that archway, I am going to cut out because that's just too big of a space to leave black. It won't look very good. For this series of videos, it's still going to be built just straight up as a village, but later on it will become part of my model railroad. So in making this decision, I have to think about how that's going to be used as part of the railroad. And so my decision is this. I am going to cut out these windows. Where this is going to be positioned on the layout that I'm planning, you're not going to be able to get probably closer than 1.5 to 2 feet away from it. So I don't think you're going to scrutinize the empty interior too closely. Likewise, it'll give me an opportunity if I open it up and decide to put in a lighting system in the layout, which I most likely will do to light up some buildings. It'll give me a chance to put some bulbs inside, light up the interior, and be able to see that from the outside. So I'm going to do the cutting of the windows before I do any of the folding of the pieces. Some of these that are at the edge, obviously I'll be able to cut out most of the way with the scissors. They're not perforated like the pieces themselves were. But this one here, this is going to be the tedious one. I'm going to have to use the X-Acto blade to cut out every single one of those windows. Okay, and that's now the last of the windows cut out. The next step's going to be a pretty easy one. You're going to fold each piece to match the perimeter on the base. And these pieces come lightly scored. You're not going to be able to see that on the camera, but you're not going to need anything special to bend them. I mean, they'll just very easily go into position. The next step will be what secures them into position. Okay, so obviously these walls aren't going to stand on their own. There's nothing to glue them to. And if you remember, I said earlier to hang on to this scrap cardboard. This is why. We're going to have to cut out strips of this, fold them into L shapes, and then use those to glue the walls to each other and the walls to the base. I'll show you how. Okay, and I found two other tools that'll come in handy. Just a metal ruler and a pencil. And this doesn't need to be a work of total precision. I just decided to make lines at 1/4 inch spacing. And I'll actually cut out strips that are 1/2 inch wide, and then those will be folded in half. And these are not scored like the building walls themselves. It can be a little tough to fold a strip. So this is overkill. I tend to be too much of a perfectionist. This is just a panel scriber. I'm just going to do my own quick scoring. Would have been easier to do this before cutting. Thinking about which way I want to bend it. Really shouldn't matter for adhesion, but if you happen to look inside, I mean, you can see this white here, but also still has some of these green markings, might be more visible. So I decided I want to have the inside edge just be the plain cardboard, because that's going to be less noticeable if you do happen to peek inside one of those windows and see it. So what I have to do now is cut strips that are actually smaller than the walls themselves. If you can imagine the corner pieces coming together, you don't want to run this to the very edge, because then the next corner coming in, I wish I had more hands to really illustrate this, that piece would overlap. So you want to hold these back from the corners. And according to the instructions, it's not even necessary to run this most of the way. I can cut out a piece for here, one here, and one here. And then the bottom piece will allow it to be stuck to the base, the angle to the next wall. And we'll just go around the perimeter until all of the pieces are attached. Okay, so you can see what I was driving at here. These don't have to span the entire wall, just a good portion of it, just something to attach to the wall next to it. And this is where I'll start using the white glue supplied with the kit. I believe this is the same as Elmer's glue or any white glue you'd buy, so if you run out, it'd be easy to find more. But this is all you'll need to adhere the cardboard to each other. Okay, that's the first tab in place. What I'll do is I'll glue all the tabs to one piece, make sure they're good and dry before I start trying to attach it to other pieces. Okay, so this is the first piece with all of the tabs fully adhered. And I'm not going to adhere the roof tabs. I don't want them getting in the way when I'm working, but that's something I'll put on before I put the roof cardboard and that'll come after all the bricks on the outside. As I work my way through the next pieces, you have to be mindful of what goes together how and where the tabs are. There's obviously no need to put a second tab on this edge since it'll adhere to the tab on the side. They will all still need bottom tabs though. Okay, so before I go crazy gluing the tabs on these end pieces, they have much more intricate folds and narrower ends, I want to put the three main pieces together. And this is a good chance too to make sure none of the tabs are going to interfere. So it just lets me kind of dry fit everything. Can't totally hold that one into place, but at least I can look at it. I know I have all the tabs I need. I know that none of the tabs are interfering with each other. And now I can start gluing the pieces together. So I've glued these two corner pieces to each other. I'm going to let that set up before I glue it to the base. This way I make sure everything stays together. And here is one final reminder, is you'll always line up the numbers and the arrows. Even though after you put the bricks on the walls, you will sand them flat, so there is some room to play. It just makes sense to try to get it as precise as you can at the beginning. And while I wait for that, this front arch entry, it looks like I just need to put tabs on the two sides. There won't need to be anything on the bottom. You can see getting this front corner is a little difficult. This cardboard kind of wants to unfold itself and push that front corner out. It's kind of interesting. It sets, white glue sets almost too quickly and almost not quickly enough all at the same time. Because once it does set and adhere, you're not moving it again, not without really ripping up cardboard. But if you let go too soon, like this corner keeps wanting to snap back out of shape. Probably should have come up with some kind of clamp for the 90-degree corners that are simple. This is the kind of thing, after you do a few of these, you'll get the hang of it. Sometimes there's just no way to learn other than the trial and error. Still not totally happy with this corner here. I can't seem to get it at a 90. And at this point, these tabs are too well adhered to be sliding around. But that's the kind of thing, when we do the brickwork, there's going to be a lot of forgiveness in the brickwork, and I believe I'll be able to compensate for that.